I can just get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, I was thinking just because we've got a lot of stuff to go through and a lot of stuff that's in a similar vein, we might as well start off. I don't think it's starting off light, but starting off with something a little more, um, I don't know, family-ish, and start with
Okay.
We Live in Time
Sure. That's perfectly fine.
because I've
So,
seen
trailer.
well, I've seen the trailer and I've seen a lot of the press about it. And one of the things that I thought was really sweet is when Andrew Garfield went to
Hmm.
the premiere for that movie, Florence Pugh wasn't able to be there, and he carried a cardboard cutout of her everywhere he went
That's so
through the whole
sweet.
thing. Yeah, like it was really cool. I was like, if I didn't already like Andrew Garfield, like that would have been the moment I think that I was like, no, this guy's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, for
So
sure. I didn't even know about that. That's cool.
yeah,
So, watched the movie this past week. From the trailer, I didn't really know much about it other than it's about a love story between man and a woman in England, and that's all I really knew. Uh, Much deeper than that. It shows their story at different stages from when they first met to when they're further into the relationship and are trying to conceive and have a baby, and then present to pretty much, unfortunately, towards the end when you find out that Florence Pugh's character, Almut, is at going through her final days, months, etc. She is diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. So it is a very heavy film and definitely something that tears at your heartstrings because you see this relationship bloom from the very beginning, and they'll go between like these three different timeline well throughout the timeline of the relationship they'll go to like three different periods of or chapters of their time spent together. So if we're just going to start from the beginning, uh, Almut is played by Florence Pugh, and she is a chef, has her own restaurant in the very beginning, which is very exciting, and she meets Andrew Garfield's character after she accidentally hits him with her car, which is just an unfortunate accident. It's hysterical at the time because she's there at the hospital and he's completely clueless.
So sorry, but do we know each other?
Yeah, no, sorry. I I ran you over.
He is just getting out of a divorce or in the process of going through a divorce, so he's kind of just a little bit hopeless. And they meet one another through this accident, and before they know it, they start falling for one another, and they really get to know about one another's lives, and it's just fascinating. And Andrew Garfield's character is someone who works more like in the business side of things, so he's, not in tune to really her lifestyle. He plays the character Tobias, and he's just so fascinated by her, and he is immediately just impressed by her confidence and just how she carries herself. And she starts to fall for him too, and they begin this relationship. And then we get to like the second piece of the relationship where they're together, and it shows like as if like they start off in the city because you see like the different places they live throughout this relationship, and in the end they're somewhere in the countryside, like on a farm. So they're both figure somewhere in the city, maybe in London or somewhere at least in a more urban setting. And in the second piece where they're finally like moving in together and talking about a lifestyle, Florence Pugh's character Almut originally was not open to kids, and her at that point boyfriend Tobias says, I really want kids. And she starts feeling pretty ill, and you find out that she is diagnosed with cancer. You don't know what type of cancer, but she's pretty ill. And then after she goes through, I guess she gets cancer twice. So the first time she gets cancer, she's able to beat it. And then between the first time and then the second time of cancer, which is we're going to call it part three because they're showing three different parts of the relationship. She already has a daughter, but she gets pregnant. And they're like, this is the perfect time, get pregnant, you're in remission now, etc. So after she gets pregnant, she gets diagnosed with ovarian cancer again. And she has to go through chemo, and they show you just the roughness of and just difficulty of going through such a terrible disease and in such an advanced stage of stage 3 as well. And at that point, they're not married. They're together, they're partners, they have a beautiful young daughter, and she wants to make more of her life. So without telling Tobias, she enrolls herself in this cooking competition. Similar to like what you would see with like I can equate it to Iron Chef America. It's a European, I've never heard of it before, but it's this competition where she enters and she goes to compete for England. So she takes one of the sous chefs for as her partner because I guess they compete in doubles, and they train for months and months and months, and she doesn't tell Tobias, and then finally he finds out, and during this training you can tell she's running to the bathroom, she's throwing up, she's feeling incredibly weak and ill, but yet she is so determined to get this title and to win this. And when Tobias, says, why do you want this, spend time with your family? And she says, I don't want to just be a mom. I want my daughter to remember me for what I was able to achieve at the end. I want to be more than just her mother. I want to be her mother and someone who was able to achieve this great accomplishment of being a top chef. So you watch her compete, and it's pretty inspiring, and you can see just how much Tobias roots her on and how they're both just such great partners, and you can tell how loving their relationship is, but also even in times of conflict, just how they really do hear one another out and make the other feel seen. And I think Andrew Garfield was more invested in the relationship in the very beginning, and Florence Pugh's character, Almond, wasn't as invested. And I think she was interested and she saw how much this guy cared about her, but she wasn't as, I don't want to say willing, but she didn't want kids. She wasn't looking for something long term, whereas he was out of a bad relationship, recently divorced, and I think he saw a lot of good in her and realized how the two of them could really be such a compatible unit together. So it explores that relationship. It explores just how they're more than just companions, but how he is an excellent caretaker for her when she needs, and also just a supportive partner when she needs a shoulder to cry on with her being sick. So overall, very good film, definitely a tearjerker. And it's interesting how they play out the three parts of their life from the very beginning to when they're together as a couple and trying to conceive a child to the very end when she's kind of going behind his back and trying to compete and train for this competition, and really making the most of her last months on Earth before she goes. So overall, I think both of them acted very well in this film, and it's definitely very emotional, being that cancer is real, it's prevalent. I mean, if you don't know somebody who's had cancer, in your own family, definitely someone, I mean, my mother was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, and I think just seeing what she was going through is a lot of what my mom went through last year, and luckily my mom is now cancer-free, so very excited about that. But it definitely was something that was super heavy from a topic standpoint, but it also, I think, seeing their dynamic relates to my parents' dynamic of just how you need a strong partner to support you, and how that really does make all the difference when you're going through something this big, and how relationships aren't perfect, and how there are going to be challenges and obstacles that come your way. And it's really how the couple is able together to overcome these. So, yeah, I thought it was a good watch, emotional piece, some laughs here and there, but definitely is a different side of Florence Pugh, and I think of Andrew Garfield too, because I haven't seen him in such a serious role like this as well.
I know he's done a few. I haven't watched them, but he did. Was it called Hacksaw Ridge? Is that what it was? Where he was,
Oh,
but
military film, right?
yeah, but I think that one was. I think that one was the true story where he was like one dude that ended up holding off like an entire like platoon attack to protect his own guys.
Mm,
If it's the movie I'm thinking of. But he's done his dramatic work, and I think he's good at it.
hmm
And I would imagine there would be a lot, not necessarily a lot, but at least a decent amount of just kind of natural comedic moments in this because they're both pretty funny.
Yeah,
Like they both have that in them, and I think that would probably come out um just kind of naturally. And is the movie strictly chronological? Like is it beginning to end, or does it kind of bounce back and forth through
bounces
time?
back and
Is
forth.
it okay?
Yep. So
Okay,
you'll
yeah,
see her with the shaved or the buzz look, sort of like Demi Moore and
yeah,
the
and the Navy one.
yes, that one. So she's got like the crew cut and looking like a total badass. That's like part three, as I like to
Yeah.
refer this to. And then you see her with like bangs and like long blonde hair, and that's sort of like in the beginning. So based on like the hairdo, you can kind of tell like where she is in her life, but going back and forth. But I think they did a good job with it overall, and it definitely makes sense why they went back and forth because you were able to see why things meant more in the future when they showed the actual moments in the past and then jumping forward to, let's say, when the daughter was born. Actually, oh, I don't want to say one of my favorite, I'll say it, sorry, without giving too much. But one of my favorite moments was in, we'll just say, the second part of the film of her actually giving birth. Let's just say it was not a traditional birth scenario, and that's all I'm going to say. But it was beautiful and funny, and everyone in the theater was like laughing and clapping, and it was really something special.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I saw the trailer and I was like, this. I mean, it looks legitimately good. So, I don't know if it's. Would you think it's something that people will talk about come award season, or is it just a good film that maybe isn't quite going to get there?
It's a great question, Kevin. I don't think I think it's a good story, a good film. I don't think it's going to be up for awards. I could be wrong because I don't know what else is out there.
Yeah.
I, I feel like traditionally we don't see the true nominated material until like November, December. But this was really great in its own way, and um, not that it wasn't original, because I think in general it's it's a story that people can relate to in some fashion, and it's a love story. But I feel like oftentimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, like love stories like this aren't nominated for awards.
I'm trying to think because I think the Bradley Cooper Jennifer Lawrence one was where she's a little crazy.
Oh, yes, yes.
Can't think of the name, but I think that one was nominated.
For best
Um,
pick for best film, or was that more just them? Because she won best actress for that, I believe, right?
she may
Or
have.
supporting.
Um, I thought it was up for Best Picture, but I can't remember. This one, yeah, this one. Just looking at it, I'm not sure that like for even from the trailers that I would expect it to be up for Best Picture, but a lot of the stuff in the trailers made it feel like maybe they would be up for some awards,
Could be.
individual awards. Like they look like they did a really good job just from the trailer. So
Silver
um,
Linings Playbook.
Silver Linings Playbook, yeah,
You
which I
know,
love.
I like, but it's a good story. But here's the other thing too, Kevin. Did that, I mean, they won awards. That didn't win Best Picture, but I don't know. It was good. It wasn't great. And I guess it is
Mhm.
similar in the sense where it's like, all right, a love story, and that one's more just how dysfunctional both of them are.
Yes, yes, it's almost the opposite of this. It seems.
Whereas these people, I mean, they have their own stuff that they're going through, but it's not something where they are going through major mental health issues.
Mhm. Yeah. There's definitely a level of instability in the Silver Linings Playbook that that permeates through that whole thing. It's kind of the whole point of that one, and this one seems like it's kind of takes the idea of mental health and instead of dealing with that, deals with illness and life and what that means. Which, to be fair, is probably a more emotional story.
100%.
But it,
And I just don't know, and I hate to say this, but I think award seasons are often influenced by what's topical and what's going on in the world. And I
sure.
don't think, as beautiful as a story as it, as it's written, I don't know if it's based on a book. I should look into that. But um,
Yeah, I didn't see anything anywhere that said that it was, but
yeah,
that doesn't mean it wasn't. It just didn't see it listed anywhere. It might actually.
that's what I'm checking.
Um,
Live in time. What happens when live in time? Live in time. It's a film directed by John Crowley from a screenplay by Nick Payne. All right, so it was
oh,
originally a
no
screenplay, but it's
screenplay.
not saying that's it.
Yeah, I feel like too. If this was based on a book, had these two in it, they would probably put that on the poster or something. It would probably be a little more obvious.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, it did well on Rotten Tomatoes. Got 77% from the critics, 87% from the audience.
I believe that.
Yeah, so it resonated a little more with the audience than the critics, and I think that's good. Like I'm excited. I maybe excited is the wrong word, but I really want to see it when it comes out. And these
Hmm.
usually aren't necessarily my types of movies, but there was a lot in the trailer that I saw that I just really liked. It just felt like a more genuine film than some of the other things that are out there.
Yeah,
So,
and it's also nice to see them both play two characters from the UK. I'm used to seeing them
mhm.
playing Americans,
Yeah,
or yeah, actually, both of them Americans. So, hearing their natural accents and seeing them more in their element in England. So that was cool too. And I think it was, I mean, everyone that I saw it with, I think like three or four other women, and everyone appreciated it and um, shed a few tears. It was definitely a heavy film, but it was a film that I think could, in some way, shape, or form, like be relatable. Like I said, whether you've experienced a family member or you'll know somebody who has gone through, having a loved one that has had to go through chemotherapy or cancer and just how ugly of a disease it is. So, but yeah, definitely give it a watch, whether it's in theaters or, I mean, it's been out for at least 2, 3 weeks now. So even I'm
yeah,
sure we'll come to streaming, I'd imagine by Christmas, but
probably right around. Yeah, yeah. It'll
that's what
be
I'm thinking.
the current trend is from what I'm seeing is that most things come out within 4 weeks of release on
Hmm.
digital. It sometimes even less than that, depending on the film.
Yeah,
And then it's usually about a month after that that it ends up on some streaming
streaming
service because
service.
there's so many services now. So yeah, we'll see where it ends up. If it when it rents, if it rents for under $20, I might just rent it. Um, but
Yeah.
it looks promising. I
Yeah,
kind
it
of
was good.
Yeah, because I talked about Alien Romulus last week, and I Transformers One just came out on digital, and I actually bought both of those. Because the funny thing is, if you're going to watch something and it's available for rent or it's available to buy and it's right away, the
Hmm.
difference is like $5. So
Right.
you may as well just spend the $5 and just buy it. Um, so, but yeah, this one, if it rents for low enough, I might try and get to it early. If it doesn't, I'll wait for it to stream. But I definitely want to see it when it does. Like I'm very curious about it, and it looks excellent. So anybody
It is.
listening or
Yeah.
watching that hasn't seen the trailer should definitely check out the trailer.
Yeah.
Um,
And
if
it's
that's your
definitely
jam,
it's also
yeah,
a different romance type of movie. I didn't feel like it was like a Nicholas Sparks movie where I'm just like, okay, cheesy. Although I do like The Notebook, but just certain romance films, it's like, okay, this is the same song and dance, but this is definitely heavy, has some unexpected moments for sure, like the birth of their child. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and it was definitely a different type of film than I've seen in the past with both Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. And I think they also had really good chemistry on the screen as well, which was nice to see.
That actually doesn't surprise me either. They seem like two people just in real life that would be really compatible.
Totally.
So, yeah, and then, like I said, I saw that thing about the award, or not the award show, but the red carpet where she couldn't be there, and I thought that was just fun. Like that's just a cool thing to do.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
all right, cool. Well, moving on from something that was sweet and romantic, I'm going to talk about the film Behind Me, Don't Move, which dropped on Netflix, and this is the very opposite of that. It the gist of the movie, if you read anything or watch the trailer or just read the title, this girl, she gets injected, she gets taken by a kidnapper, and he injects her with some kind of paralytic agent where she starts to lose control of her body and ultimately can't move anymore. But she manages to escape from him before the effects start to kick in. And it's not a permanent thing, but she basically has to, fight her own body shutting down and try and get away from this guy at the same time. So the movie opens up. She's in bed with her husband, and she rolls over. There, you can tell like it's just not a happy situation for whatever reason. Um, and she rolls out of bed and she gets in her car and she drives off. She looks like she's going to go for a run or something, and she goes to um, as a California park, and now the name of it wasn't Big Sur, but it was um, it's a well-known state park in California. And so she pulls up, she gets out of her car, and she goes to the top of this ridge, and it picks up a picture and she wipes it off, and it's a picture of a little kid. So we kind of realize this is like a memorial for presumably her son. And she takes like a little toy out of her pocket and puts it in front of this memorial. It's like a gift or whatever. And then she walks away and she walks to the edge of this cliff, and she's standing at the edge, and you start to get the feeling that she's going to jump or she wants to jump. Right. And so I think up until this point, there's been zero dialogue, and it takes a good, 5 or 6 minutes to get there. So it opens up with um, a relatively, I don't want to say emotional opening, but it definitely, you're watching it and you can tell, you can feel what's going on. Like you get um, all of what's happening just from the way that she is, um, portraying herself and going through things without having to say anything, which is kind of nice. The actress's name is Kelsey, and I'm going to butcher her last name. Is as Asbilly or Asbill, um, and she was on Yellowstone. She's the Native American girl that one of Kevin Costner's sons is married to, and she's very pretty. And anyway, so she's at this thing, and she's getting ready to jump off this cliff, right? Like, so you can tell she's going to do this, and this dude shows up, and he talks her down, like he really kindly talks to her, tries to get her to move away from the edge, tells her a story about because he can tell what's going on with her also, and he tells her a story about when he was young, he got in a car accident, and the girl he was with died. He was in a coma for 2 months, not in coma, but in a hospital bed for 2 months, and he had to recover. And that whole time he had to live with the weight of, this girl being dead from the car accident. And so, it's a really sweet conversation, and him pulling her back and, talking her off the ledge. And they end up walking back to their cars together. And this guy is played by an actor named Finn Wittrock, who I'm not familiar with. Um, but he looks like a dude that might have a future in at least, some rom-coms or something. Like, he's a handsome guy, right? These two make a good looking couple if that was where this movie was going. Um, but he talks her off the ledge. She gets back to her car, and he's parked right next to her, and she goes to get in her car. And he's already in his car, so he gets in his car first. She goes to get in her car, and he's parked too close to her car, so she can't get in. So she opens the door, and this is the point where you start to realize that knowing the plot of the movie, unfortunately, kind of hurts, because he's the bad guy, even though he's been super kind and helpful and like I said, talked her off the ledge and all that, like literally talked her off the ledge. So she's got her door open and she's kind of trying to wedge in, and he walks around, and now she's got her door open and she's trapped between this open door and him in this little space. And he's got this umbrella with a taser in it, and he tases her. And so the next bit of the movie is her waking up in the car, kind of zip tied in the back seat. And so now they have like the real dialogue. He's like, "Yeah, that wasn't my name." You get the idea that he's going to kill her. We don't know why. He's just a crazy person. And ultimately, she has a pocket knife in her pocket that he didn't find. So she is able to cut the zip ties, and she tries to attack him. It doesn't work, but they drive off the road and hit a tree. And so the car's out of commission. He's a little messed up. She is able to get out of the car, and they're kind of facing off. And that's when he says, he's like, "Are you feeling it yet?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, I just injected you with this thing." And so he explains it. He's like, "First, you're going to start to lose control of your fingers. And then, as it goes through your body, you're just going to lose control of more and more and more." And he said something about it, like the effects only last like 2 hours. So once it fully takes hold, um, you're only down for a couple hours, because the feel of it, and I don't think he says it, but the feel of it is, when he's going to kill somebody, he wants them to be alive when he does it, but he also wants to get them to where he wants them to be. I should preface this too. And this is not a gory movie. Like, this is more of a psychological horror film than it is it's not even a horror film. It's just more of a psychological thriller than it is any kind of horror. And so, she gets away, and she's running, but she is, as she's starting to move and get further away from him, she's losing more and more control of her body. And he catches up to her at a river, and she just says, "Screw it," and jumps in, and she gets taken downstream, because at this point she has almost no control of her body. She's able to crawl out, then she passes out in the grass. And one of the things that actually, I don't know if it bothered me about the movie, but I wish it had been different. I think it could have been more suspenseful if this whole bit hadn't happened. I feel like this should have been more about her going through the stages of losing control. But that actually goes pretty quick. So maybe a half hour into the movie, she's already lost full control. And so she's passed out in a field. It happens to be the field of a farmer. And he finds her and brings her into his house. And then bad guy shows up, chaos ensues. And then maybe 40 minutes into this hour and a half movie, they're back together again. And now it becomes kind of a predictable, psychological back and forth as she over time starts to get control of her body back. There's a lot of things, I don't want to ruin the end of the movie or anything else, but there's a lot of things in this movie that are, they start to feel questionable the longer you watch it. I think she did a good job as an actress. I think he did a good job, but like, there's a lot of times that, if he was just going to kill her and she was this much hassle, which to a degree, sometimes, when you're portraying a psychopath in a movie, sometimes they like that stuff. Like, sometimes they like the challenge or whatever. you don't really get this vibe. Like the vibe from him the whole time is that he's frustrated with her, um, getting away. He's frustrated with her doing the things she's doing. So part of me is like, why wouldn't you just kill her, get it over with, and then whatever. Um, we never really find out his motivations. We find out some stuff about him that makes his character more interesting, but they also then don't develop those things as any more than like the one scene where we learn about him. Um, and like there was a lot of stuff left on the table. There was a lot of stuff that was done um, just not in a way that I think they should have done it. It's it's not a bad film, but at the same time, like the critics gave it a 71%, which means, the critics liked it well enough, but the audience only gave it a 47%, which is a huge divide. And I think a lot of that comes from the predictability and almost the longer it goes, the silliness of it. Like this guy should have just killed her. And at one point, like she has the opportunity to just die, which she was trying to do at the beginning of the film. And instead, like she keeps fighting back to fight this guy off and all this. And part of me is like, why wouldn't she just give in to not him, but there was a couple of situations where she could have just let herself die. And I was like, if that's where she was in the beginning of the film, I don't really get how this guy threatening her life would make her want to live enough to fight and maybe die at his hand. Like if she was going to take her life in the beginning and then she had the opportunity to again do it herself, knowing that if she didn't, he was going to do it. Like why would she let him? So there's some motivations that were really weird, and just some things about it that were questionable. Like I said, the performances were solid. The movie itself was pretty. I mean, it all takes place in the woods, for the most part. I think the section in the middle with the old man, while I like the old man, the old farmer guy, was a little unnecessary. It just kind of, um, it sort of displays how violent this guy Richard can be. But it it only kind of works. So it's entertaining enough if you're looking for something that's relatively suspenseful, but very quickly it gets predictable. Like I said, once you get past the point of her being um, completely paralyzed, and I think there was more tension they could have built through that than almost anything else in the movie. I think that's what should have been drawn out. Um, And so I think they missed a shot there. But all in all, I mean, it was an okay movie. I like her. I think she did a decent job. I actually really like the dude that played Richard, Finn Whitrock. Like I said, I don't know what he's from. I feel like I've heard his name before, and he's like I said, a handsome guy. Like I think he's got the face for movies at least. So we'll see if he shows up in some more stuff. And we'll see what happens with their careers. This was definitely a made for Netflix movie. Like if this had been in the theater, it wouldn't have made it. So it was in the right place. Um, I just think it needed a little more behind it. It's interesting that Sam Raimi, who's a huge horror director, is one of the producers. But like you look at it, it doesn't have any Sam Raimi feel to it. So I think he put his money into it, but didn't have his hands in there at all. Another thing that's interesting, looking at the IMDb page, it looks like it had two directors. So I'm not sure how or why they split up that role, but that may
Hmm.
be, part of why it didn't quite work. Um,
Kevin, you're someone who sees a lot of Netflix films. I
mhm.
shouldn't say a lot, but a good amount. Do you feel like films that come to Netflix within the past year or two are really at the caliber of films that start in theaters?
Yes and no. I feel like the main difference usually is the same issue is that they're films that they always look great. Like for whatever reason, Netflix is making films that look, you know, theater quality. Like so this whole thing is beautiful. There's only a few like explosions, like So I would imagine the budget for this was probably pretty low.
Right.
Um, but I mean, it looked great. The acting was okay. The problem that they all seem to have when they're straight to Netflix is there's usually some kind of, plot issue. They don't usually come out great. Now, I mean, Netflix has a track record of doing some things really well. They did, but it's usually stuff that's based on something else. So they did Bird Box, which was based on a book.
Right, which
Bird
I saw
Bird
that was a
Box was
really good
solid.
move. Yeah.
They just did The Three Body Problem, which is a Chinese book, or a book written by a Chinese author. Like in Chinese, had to be translated to English for the book, but the book was really popular, so they made the series out of it. They made some changes between the series and the book itself.
Hmm.
Actually, a pretty significant amount of changes, but they worked. So the series on Netflix was pretty good. Um, but yeah, I just feel like they ideally Netflix should stick to series and maybe commit more to the series that they're making, because they cancel a lot of series that are really good. And I think maybe because it's cheaper to make a movie that's not so great and get people to watch them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, this one's interesting because it's got a 71% from the critics, which makes it sound like it's really good. But if you look at the audience score, it's definitely a different story. And I probably liked it a little more than the audience score, but not a lot more.
Right.
Like
But also they don't have like big name actors. I mean, Bird Box,
Bird
you
Box
had
did, you had Sandy
you
Bullock,
had
yeah.
Sandy Bullock. And
Um,
also it was just a very unique premise, right? I
yeah,
remember seeing it during COVID in 2020, and I was just like, what the heck am I watching? But I had to finish it because I was like, this is so fascinating.
yeah.
Whereas this, from what you're describing, it's the kidnap story.
Mhm.
And I mean, obviously, they're using drugs to paralyze her, which is, very disturbing and upsetting. But are these ideas that are being brought to large companies and they pass on it and they're like, all right, I guess we'll take it to Netflix, see what they say.
Yeah, I mean that's my guess. When you're out there pitching, you're pitching to everybody, and
Yeah,
it's like throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks, right? Like you just need one person to see it and say it's going to go through. And when you put Sam Raimi's name in there somewhere, that helps.
sure.
It's a little bit like when we talked about Broadway last week. Like just because you have your name on it doesn't mean it's going to fly, right? Like it's possible to
Yeah,
put something out there and have it not work,
sure.
but you hope that you can get there. And um, this girl, I don't like. She's pretty. She's not a bad actress. I don't see her leading blockbuster films
Right.
um, in the theaters. And yeah, this is definitely one that if it had gone to the theater, it would have come and gone, and
Pretty
nobody would have
quickly.
noticed. Here, at least, they pump it on Netflix. It shows up on your what to watch
Sure.
page right at the front. They can push their own stuff, so it'll get the watches and all that. But um, it was it was problematic for sure, and I think it really could have been better. I'm trying to think that like the
Yeah.
last big name thing, and I think it was this year, was the one that I watched earlier with Jennifer Lopez, where she's in outer space. Um, I can't remember what that one was called, but I mean, it was decent. It had its moments, but again, it was one where the story kind of breaks down and like ridiculous choices are made, and that one probably had a huge budget. It was very special effects laden and all that.
In
Um,
Atlas, is
yeah, yeah,
that what it's called? Yeah.
yeah, and that was her. There was another name in there too, but that was tons of special effects, and you're paying Jennifer Lopez to do it.
Right.
So like that was a big budget one. You have the Zack Snyder um Rebel Moon films that they put money into that they paid a
Hmm.
ton for. And for me, to be honest, like if Netflix is making movies, I'd rather them just make movies like the one that I just watched. Like, okay, maybe it's not great, but it was a fine movie to watch while I had nothing to do. Like it's a fine streaming movie. I can pause it, I can come back to it, I can do all these things
Sure.
and not be heartbroken. Like Alien Romulus belonged in a theater. Even though I watched it at home, I didn't want to turn it off. I wanted to watch the whole thing beginning to end. I wanted to be drawn
Right.
into it. The acting was better, the directing was better, the story was better. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I definitely think that the other thing is that I don't think Netflix quite knows their niche when it comes to movies. They'll just make anything.
Correct. It just
And
seems like it's the bottom of the barrel of like the ideas pot, and they're like, all right, we t asked Paramount, they said no. And then we asked Disney, and they said no. And we asked Warner Brothers, and we asked like all of these like larger companies. Well, have you asked Netflix? I don't know. Let's ask Netflix. And that's kind of what I think is happening here. And it's
yep.
just a mishmash of, quite frankly, a lot of crap. And there are some good things, but I think you
Hmm.
have to get through a lot of, even just like some of the films I saw recently, which I'm just like I watched a film the other day that was such garbage, a family affair with Nicole Kidman and Zac Efron and Joey King, and I'm like, what is this? Like, just it's not good. It's supposed to be like another story where somebody's mom falls in love with a much younger guy, and it's like it's another song and dance, pulling out the same tricks and just putting different names to people and having it in a different part of the US or a different part of the world. It's just a lot of it's just not as original content wise in general. So, but yeah, I 100% agree with you, Kevin. I think they should just stick to series. I think that is what Netflix has been known for and
Hmm.
what they've been able to make such a large profit on. I mean, look at like they peaked during COVID with different series. I mean, I
Hmm.
can name like the Squid Games, Queen's Gambit, even though I wasn't crazy about it, but
Stranger Things.
straight well, that was before COVID when that started,
Yep.
but like that's what put them on the map. I was gonna say, oh my God, Tiger King, which was like such garbage, but
Mhm.
that like was
It was
something that they
enthralling, like
watch.
people were watched. Yeah.
Right. And just even like these reality series like Love is Blind and just they're rolling out so many things that people get hooked on. Like stick with the stuff that's making
Yeah.
profit, not these kind of miscellaneous movies that aren't getting picked up by other, I don't know. But granted, I guess someone needs to do it or they feel like, all right, let's see if this hits and they just
It's
go
like
for that.
when we were growing up before all the streaming services, you had
Hmm.
HBO, you had Showtime, you had all these ones that were either making their own content or all these good movies, and then you had like USA and TNT and all these other
Right.
channels that did the B movies, and that's kind of what Netflix has become. HBO still makes great movies.
Hmm.
Showtime has some great movies and shows. Again, they're kind of doing shows, the same with Apple TV. But the thing about those places is they've kind of found their niche. Like Apple TV does a lot of science fiction, not necessarily hard science fiction, but things that are very science fiction related. Like they just did Dark Matter, which Andrew and I watched, that was incredible.
Hmm.
They did Severance, which is brilliant. That comes back January, I think, and that show was just amazing.
Hmm.
They've got Foundation, which is more hardcore sci-fi. But they kind of have leaned into the sci-fi thing. You've got a channel out there, Shutter, which is completely dedicated to horror. They don't do anything else. They have
Hmm.
some of their own made up content, and then they have everything else. And I think Netflix doesn't know their lane. They don't have anything they focus on, and they stay real broad, and then they just take stuff on. I'd be really curious, and I don't know where to find it, but just find like all of the movies that were made by Netflix this year and what they were rated. Um,
Just not good.
yeah, yeah, I'm actually really curious about it now that you talked about it because I just don't know. Like this one was fine. It's background cleaning and doing stuff around your house
Right.
and it's interesting enough and you kind of care about the character enough to see what happens, but at the same time like this, if you're paying attention to it, the decisions that are being made just are kind of nonsense.
Right. I just feel
So
like a lot of the films that I've seen most recently on Netflix are just not. something that I would want to see a second time, or I would
Yeah.
recommend to somebody.
Yeah.
I think that's really the best way to put it. It's just like, all right, I saw this. I need something on in the background while I do emails or while I fold laundry. It's just not something that's going to really stick out or something that you're going to want to talk about months, years later.
Yeah,
So,
that's true. I will forget about this movie. I will never watch this movie again. So like, and I'm not even saying those like mean, like, it's just there's no reason. There's nothing
it's
like,
done. It's gone by onto the next. Exactly.
yeah, like
So, yeah.
I bought Alien Romulus. I'm gonna watch Alien Romulus again. Like I liked
Right.
it. Like that's a great movie. I bought Transformers 1. I mean, my kids loved it. We started it again. Like it's a good movie. Like I recommend that movie to people. This I would never,
Right. But
like
it's
I said,
interesting, Kevin, because like I think about some series like Queen's Gambit I've already watched twice through. And because it's so good.
it
And
really is.
that's how I feel about like that's their niche. It's the series. Stick with the series, Netflix.
Hmm.
Stop with these trash movies. Because look, it's a numbers game. One out of, every 20 is probably going to be really good. But think about from a success rate or even just from the Emmys. Um, Baby Reindeer that originated on Netflix. That was a series, like a limited series. Like I think that's actually their niche. It's limited series
Hmm.
in general, with the exception of Stranger Things. I think that's what they do best. Like I want to see. I was actually out this evening. Everyone's telling me that Monsters, the Menendez brothers series is supposed to be fantastic.
Yeah, I've heard kind of mixed reviews on that one. I think it is very much is Ryan Murphy, is that his name? Um, but I think it's very much his production. So
Mm,
it's over the top. There's a lot of people that were kind of offended by the way that it
okay.
really does portray the Menendez brothers as like bad people. And it's important to remember that like they were assaulted, like they had a
Hmm.
really bad life. It's not like they just woke up and they're like, we're going to kill our parents and this is going to be fun. Like it wasn't
Right.
like that. And this is very sensationalized, I guess. Is
Hmm.
the biggest complaint about it from anybody. I say that having not watched it, so I don't know for sure. But I
Yeah.
know that that's been the issue with it.
But the point is people are talking about it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And clearly it's something that is getting notoriety in some way, shape, or form. And as a result, people are watching it. I don't think Don't Move is getting any,
Mm-mm.
double looks or, and
No,
I think
I
that's
saw it recommended somewhere as like suspense films that are coming out, and
right.
then I didn't hear about it after that. Um, so yeah, I do. I think
Probably
Netflix.
just came up in your algorithm, Kevin.
No, I saw it somewhere else. I definitely saw it outside of Netflix. So
Okay.
like, I know that like that's why I wanted to watch it.
Hmm.
Um, and as a matter of fact, I heard about it without seeing a trailer, without knowing even that this girl was in it, who I like. Like I like her from Yellowstone. Um,
Hmm.
but like I didn't know anything about it. So it I, I'm not disappointed that I watched it necessarily. I just also wouldn't really tell anybody to go watch it. Like there's more
Right.
suspenseful things out there. So,
Right.
um, but speaking since we're talking about series on Netflix, isn't the next one that you watched, isn't that on Netflix? The Nobody Wants This?
It sure is. Great
Yeah,
transition.
there you go. Now this one I've heard great things about. I really, really want to watch it, but I haven't yet. But I definitely want to know about it because it looks fantastic.
If you want a lighthearted, fun show that you can just escape from, it gave me a very similar feeling as like when I watch Emily in Paris in terms of just something that's exciting, something that is fun to watch, makes me laugh. So yes, just started it and I just finished it all this week. It's called Nobody Wants This. It has Adam Brody and Kristen Bell, who I absolutely love, and she plays a woman in her either late 30s, early 40s who has a podcast with her sister, and they talk about sex. And then Adam Brody plays a newly single rabbi who is fresh out of a long-term relationship, and they meet at a party where they have a mutual friend, and they're both really interested in one another. And she had never dated someone Jewish before, and he's never dated a non-Jew before. And I think he's intrigued, especially since he's only been with Jewish women, and she's kind of a pessimist when it comes to love, given her past. And I mean, her and her sister kind of shit on the whole dating scene out there in general. That's part of their podcast, on just talking about how dating sucks and how it is to be single, and just and they make fun of it and just how difficult it is, and make light of just everything together. It's sort of like the antithesis of just her whole podcast when she meets Adam Brody's character. So he's a rabbi. His name is Noah, and she plays Joanne. And it starts off as like a very caring friendship, and over time, like they actually move into a relationship pretty quickly. But within the first episode, she goes on a really bad date after meeting Adam Brody's character, and they make fun. They're like, "Oh, is he like a guy with like a big beard? Like, what is this rabbi?" And they're like, "He's so good looking for a Jewish rabbi," making fun of it. And she ends up showing up to one of his Shabbat sermons, and he's at the altar, and in the front of the congregation. He's actually the not the head rabbi, but he's like the junior rabbi. The head rabbi has been there for years, and he's an older gentleman, and he's pretty much at this point trying to work his way up to being the head rabbi. So he does his sermon, and she's in the congregation sitting in the back. And after the end of this service, he sees her, and he starts, moseying over to her, and his parents are there, and they're from Russia, and he's, I guess at this point, first generation American. His parents came here from Russia, I guess when he was younger. And I'm sorry, they came to America, then had him and his brother, who you meet in the show. And his brother's hysterical, and he's married to a very, let's just say, interesting wife who's like very typical, like Jewish woman. So it's just funny to see this dynamic play out. And as he's making his eyes over to Joanne, his mother's like, "Who is this woman?" Everyone's trying to come up to him and be like, "Oh, I heard you're single, Rabbi Noah. I would love for you to meet my cousin, my daughter, my niece, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And he starts going to Joanne, and he immediately lights up, and he's like, "I'll meet you outside in like 15 minutes. Just stand outside." And he's trying to like get out of these long conversations, or as I know them as Jewish goodbyes, which take forever. And then his mother's like, "Who is this shiksa?" Which I've never heard of before, but I guess it's like a Yiddish word for like non-Jew blonde woman, etc. And it's just pretty funny. So you see them starting to spend more time together, and even though they're not from the same religion, just they have more in common than you would think, and they share a lot of the same values. So that's a beautiful thing, and it tells a story of like an interfaith relationship and some of the hard conversations that you need to have, especially in his status of trying to be a head rabbi. He needs to be with a Jewish woman or a woman who's willing to convert. So they talk about conversion. They talk about just a lot of things that I personally was able to relate to growing up and being raised Jewish. And I think just how he's, just incorporating her and teaching her his way of life by bringing her to a Jewish camp that he went to growing up, and that he does sermons at and works at now as a rabbi and volunteers at. So it's just very light, and it's funny. And then it shows you how modern he is, and how I think people that are the heads of their faith, they're not as traditional as, let's say, a rabbi 15, 20 years ago. Same thing goes for the Pope, right? Like this
Yeah.
Pope is the most modern, progressive Pope of all time. So just giving that dynamic, and how people are becoming more open to different ideas, and how they live their lives. I think this show really sheds light upon that while providing some humor and a good dialogue as well along the way too, with her sister being very curious, and then Joanne trying to integrate herself into, she calls them the wags, but the he's on a basketball team and they're called the matzo ballers, haha, and all of their wives are Jewish, so she's just trying to rub elbows, and try to become friends with all these Jewish women, and learn how to be a partner of someone who's Jewish and what that looks like.
Yeah, it looks like fun. And I think
So fun.
it's always fun to see Kristen Bell do comedy because she's hilarious.
She is.
And so to see her get in there and do something new, I really enjoy, seeing, because she, like I said, she's great. The Good Place is one of the best comedies like ever. And then you have what was the one where she was a teenage detective? Veronica Mars.
Oh,
Was fantastic actually. Um, and like she's just great. And like Adam Brody is kind of in his like older guy phase now, right? He's not the young, like, you know, not quite teen whatever it was that he was. So to get to see him be kind of an adult, and
hmm
is nice. Um, but I definitely want to see it. It's getting great reviews. It got renewed for a second season already, so it'll
which I'm
definitely.
not surprised because the way they leave it off, there's more to Noah and Joanne, and we need to know more about it. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm excited.
and there's been a lot of buzz, so I think
100%.
that all leads to something that's going to be um, pretty solid. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited to finally sit down and watch it. I just been inundated with like all kinds of little series and stuff that are out now that my family watches. So it's hard
hmm
to get into something new with everybody, because I feel like this is something that I would at least watch with my wife, if not, other people. But um,
hmm
I might sneak in and watch it by myself, anyways. But
It's
if I
so
get,
cute and it's
yeah,
so funny. And I think even if you didn't grow up Jewish, if you, I mean, I know you're from California, but did you go to any bar mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs growing up, or like have any friends that were Jewish?
no, as a matter of fact, I don't think I knew anyone that I knew was Jewish until college.
Interesting.
And,
Okay.
and one of them, like I found out a friend of ours was Jewish, and I didn't even know it. Like I didn't even know. I said something, um, and I don't remember what it was, but I think it must have been slightly offensive, because one of my other buddies was like, "Dude, he's Jewish," and I was like, "Oh shit, what?" And like,
Yeah.
and so like it's just like it's one of those things where if you're not around, or you don't, or people don't
hmm
talk about it, it's just something that's easy to not know. Like, um, because if it's not like you walk around with a big shirt that just says I'm Jewish, right? Like
No.
you can, I mean, people can be straight from. You know what? I take that back. I had a friend, and a family friend, not a family friend, but a friend and and her family,
hmm
that was Jewish when I was in high school, and I remember talking about that because um, her older brother, who I was also friends with, said that I forget what it's called, but when you go back to Israel at some point, um,
Birthright.
yeah, I didn't think he was old enough for it. I thought he was only still a teenager when he did it, but
hmm
he went back, and he was like, Israel's full of beautiful people. He's like, the people in Israel are very beautiful people. And I remember having that conversation in like high school. So I guess I did know at least a few people that were Jewish, but like I didn't know them to the level of participating in like
Hmm.
that side of life. It's kind of like I had a lot of friends that went to church and I didn't go to church, so we didn't really
Right.
talk about Christianity or anything like that. Um, so yeah, I guess I did know a few, but no, I didn't experience I guess the culture, if that's the right word. Um, when I was younger. So
Yeah. Still enjoyable. Still a lot of fun. And yeah, it just shows you people that come from different backgrounds, but how sometimes even if you meet someone with a different background, they don't necessarily have completely different values from you. And if anything, maybe they're more complementary.
yeah, yeah, and I think too that's like it's one of those things that's tricky because if you are in a faith that is even like hardcore is not the right word, but if they're some faiths have very specific rules, and
Yeah,
you know if you want to bend those or change those or break those, it's not easy to do.
right.
And especially if you're a leader of said religion, like a rabbi, you have to follow certain rules. It's like if you're a priest
Hmm.
in the Catholic faith and a lot of religions or versions of the Catholic faith, you can't get
Yeah,
married, you can't have a spouse, and
yeah.
so yeah, it's tricky for sure. I think there was a movie with God, I can picture everybody in it. It was Ed Norton.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Ed
He,
Norman plays a priest, right?
Ed Norton's the priest. His buddy's a rabbi, and they both fall in love with a girl.
Yes,
Jenna Elfman, I think, is the girl. I just forget who
I'm
plays
Googling it. Yeah.
his friend, but
It's called Keeping the Faith. It's with Ben
mhm.
Stiller.
Oh, is it Ben Stiller? Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. Ben
Um,
Stiller and Edward Norton. Yep. 2000 comedy romance.
yeah, and I remember just like it seems like it's more ridiculous than this
Right.
show, but at the same time, like it's still that same idea. Like
Hmm.
it gets messy, and this one gets messy because these guys are also friends. Like
Sure.
in that film, like they play basketball together, like they're friends, like they always have been, and then this
Hmm.
girl comes between them. So you have the rom-com angle where they're duking it out for this girl, but there's still also this piece where they have to navigate the waters of their
Hmm.
chosen religion to be with this girl also. So um yeah, it's definitely a dynamic that I think makes it for interesting stories to be told.
For sure.
So
Definitely.
yeah, so I definitely want to watch it. I might, like I said, I might sneak in and start watching it this week if nobody else is going to watch it with me. So
Yeah,
um
it's enjoyable for sure.
is it 8 or 10 episodes? Do you know?
I think 10, but let me double
And
check.
are they shorter episodes, like 30-minute episodes, or are they closer to an hour?
It felt like it was only they flew by, Kevin.
Do they?
Absolutely flew by. There are a total of 10 episodes, and I'd have to go back and see. Nobody wants this episode length.
Wonder if this will tell me what the
30 minutes. Yep, yep, yep.
Okay.
30
Yeah, that
minutes.
that, that definitely makes it
Flew by.
more digestible. Um
Hmm.
Trying to see um yeah, I don't necessarily recognize a couple of the other actors. They're not as big of a deal.
Hmm.
Which one is her sister? Is that Morgan?
Yep. Justine Lupe.
She's from she's in Succession.
Oh,
But she was
okay.
also in Stephen King's Mr. Mercedes TV series that most people didn't see.
Oh,
It's actually a really good series, but um, I
cool.
like her. She's funny because she can play kind of hard and cold, but she can do funny and quirky really well too.
Hmm.
I think she's actually a fun actress that may never be like the lead actress in anything, but
Hmm.
she's a great like supporting actress, and I actually just realizing that she's in that makes me want to watch that a little bit more too.
Yeah, no,
Um,
she's very good. And then whoever plays his brother is hysterical too. Timothy Simmons plays his brother
oh,
Sasha.
he was in Veep. If you've never watched
Okay,
that, have
never
you ever
seen
watched
Veep.
it?
No.
Veep is a horribly inappropriate show that is so funny. It's why can I not remember her name from Seinfeld?
Dreyfus?
Yeah, Julie Louis
Julie Marie
Dreyfus.
Dreyfus? Yeah.
She's the vice president of the United States,
Oh,
and
funny.
she's a terrible person, and everybody on it is a terrible person, and
Hmm.
it is. I mean, she won awards for it. Um, a lot of people on the show won awards for it. It won awards
Hmm.
as a show, but Timothy Simmons is in it, and he plays a character named Jonah, and he just gets shit on all the time.
Oh,
But
wow.
he's great in it because he's a dick. Like he wants to be more important than he is, and he's not, and he just gets
Hmm.
bagged on. But he's hilarious. So yeah, there's
Nice.
a lot of good folks in this. So yeah, screw it. I'm probably gonna watch it this week.
Yeah, Kevin, watch it. I think you'll like it. It's
Yeah,
so good.
yeah. Like I said, I remember I saw the first trailer and I definitely like it was on my list of things to watch. I just haven't got to it, but I feel like I might just have to force it now.
It's just really fun and yeah, it's definitely a good show to escape to for sure and feel like connected to the characters a bit and definitely put some lightness in sometimes a very dark week.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, sticking with Netflix, because I feel like almost everything we watched this week is on Netflix. I
Hmm.
watched a series popped up and it's been like on the front page of Netflix, like whoever I see sign in Netflix at my house, and it's called This is the Zodiac Speaking. And it's a documentary. I don't know how many episodes, if it's just usually when Netflix does these documentaries, it's like 3 episodes. They're about an hour long each. But this is about the Zodiac killer, and it is a legitimate documentary, so it's not a retelling or a rehashing. And it's all about the man that they believe is the Zodiac killer. I know I haven't finished this. I've only watched the first episode, which is really solid. Um, but it's my understanding that they never actually caught the Zodiac killer. And if you're not familiar, he was a serial killer in the 60s and the 70s who taunted the police with cryptic notes and coded messages and things like that. And um, they basically they think they know who it was, or they're 99% sure they know who it was. And so this interview, and I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, and it doesn't really matter. You'll if you watch it, you'll learn it. But there was a family in the 60s who, effectively befriended this guy as, he became a family friend. He was at their house all the time. Like they did things with him. They went places with him. And they, for everything they knew, they loved him. Like he was great to these three kids. He was great to their mom, all this stuff. And all the while he was, out killing people. And one of the stories that you find out at the end of the first episode is that he went to a location with these three kids in the car, left them in the car, and potentially killed two people, and then got back in the car. Like so, they were like potentially there for this murder that they didn't partake in or even know happened until they started putting things together and later in life. And it's a really fascinating story because it's definitely like the story of this guy who was living two different lives. He was a elementary school teacher. He worked with kids. He was like a diver, a swimmer, like a competition like swimmer when he was younger. So they said even though he was like older and like really tall and kind of overweight, when he got on the diving board, even in his 40s or whatever it was that he was, he was like amazingly talented, so everybody was kind of enthralled with him. He had like a great personality. Again, he took care of this woman and was kind to her and her kids when he didn't have to be. Um, and all the while he was killing people and taunting the police. And it's really fascinating to see this story kind of unfold and to see like a little bit of the guilt that these people kind of hold on to, even though they didn't know. At the same time, like they were there, that they lived with this man, or at least interacted with this man regularly. And it's a trip, and it's interesting to see how he started, taunting the police, and again sent these coded messages that people had to break down. He didn't give you the code; they were all written in, especially in a code that he created, and they had to decipher these codes to figure out what he was saying. Um, but he was just sending letters to, like, he was the first serial killer that anybody really knew about that just literally taunted the police everywhere he went. And I think it was like his third murder. Like he killed these people, and then he went up to their car and in like Sharpie pen wrote the first two murders, and then he wrote the third one was on there, and then he wrote some other note or something, and like it was just absolutely crazy. So it's a real trip. It's a real piece of history. Like this is a thing that really happened. The story isn't made up, for as crazy as it is. And the fact that they may never have caught this guy, um, is really interesting too. I'm really curious to watch the rest of it because it really is fascinating. It's almost like an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, if you ever watched that. Like they talk about all these people that were interacting with this guy, and for whatever reason they could catch him, and the things that he got away with. Like there was um this dude was leaving a location where there was a murder, and he got pulled over for speeding, and the cop that pulled him over looked in his car, there was a bloody knife, and he basically told the cop, he's like, oh, I hit a chicken with my car and I had to kill it with my knife so it didn't suffer. And the cop was like, oh, okay, cool, and let him go. And like, and then there was another time where uh he was on foot. He killed two people. He left. He was on foot. The police were coming. He walked down an alley. The police literally came up to him and they said, have you seen anybody suspicious? He said no, and they let him just go. But he was potentially the one that killed these people. Like the reasons that he got away with stuff is just wild. And again, the fact that it's a true story just makes it all the more interesting. And it's at a time, when forensics wasn't what it is today, surveillance wasn't what it is today,
Right. It's a different
databases and
world.
all that. Yeah. Like it was certainly easier to get away with things if you were smart. And all indications were that this guy was incredibly smart. So yeah, it's really interesting if you are fascinated by the whole true crime serial killer thing, then it's worth it. And apparently we are, because like
More
we
you.
yeah, we've talked about some of that stuff already, but that brings me to the last thing that we watched this week, but we both watched it. And I really liked it. It was Anna Kendrick's directorial debut.
Hmm.
And it is called Woman of the Hour. And the gist of it is, and it's based on a true story.
Hmm.
They did take a few liberties with it from what I read, but not a ton. Um, but it's about a woman who goes on the dating game, which is a very weird show back in the, I think it was 70s or 80s,
Yeah, it was 70s.
and literally pairs up with an actual serial killer. And it's an interesting story because the way that it's told, her part isn't actually as big in the whole thing as like his
Hmm.
story. But I was reading up on it, and they really, um, they didn't want to give his character too much credit for being too smart. Like they really wanted it to be about her,
Hmm.
and not necessarily like she didn't just like coincidentally outsmart him or anything like that. Like the true story was that she met this guy after they connected in the dating game. She had one conversation with him outside of the show, and she just knew there was something wrong with him. So she called the producers of the show and said, "Yeah, I know we won this prize." She said, "Can I turn it down, or can I, something else?" She's like, "I don't want to go anywhere with this man." And to the producer's credit, was a woman, but they basically were like, "Yeah, yeah, we get it. We were a little weirded out by this guy too, blah blah blah." And ultimately, um, she in real life she doesn't go on the date with him, and the woman, the story is about. It's funny. Her name is Cheryl, and the character that Anna Kendrick plays, his name is Cheryl, but Anna Kendrick's they spell it with an S, and the real woman is spelled with a C.
Mm,
And like they just made little changes because there's not a lot of information out there about this woman. And then when Anna Kendrick started working on the movie, it turned out that the actual woman had passed away a couple of years before.
mm.
So they didn't get her take on it. But she tried really hard to be respectful to this woman, even while taking the liberties that she kind of had to take. Um,
Right.
but but
They
yeah.
had her acting like pretty feisty too
Hmm.
when she's asking questions. Like she changes the questions because the questions on the show were meant to be like pretty provocative and not the most, we'll say, family friendly of questions. And she really sinks her teeth into these men and asks very intimidating questions after,
Hmm.
I guess, what, like the second segment,
Yeah.
and test these guys to understand and push their buttons to see how they act under pressure and can they give an answer that's not just filthy and something that sounds like they're just looking for a one night stand, because unfortunately a lot of these
Yeah.
questions were written to give like these gross type of answers.
Yeah. Yeah. They were definitely very misogynistic type questions. Like they even told her, like they made her change her outfit so she could, look cuter, right? Something more flattering for her body. She had to ask questions like
Yeah,
it was better if she sounded a little ditzier, like all
right,
this stuff. Like they really wanted to bring her character or bring her down a peg, to make sure that she was making these guys look good and giving them,
right,
something to work with, to be funny and appeal to that male audience that
right.
might be watching this.
But Rodney, who ends up being the mass murderer, he answers the questions most to her liking, doesn't seem as
Hmm.
much of a quite frankly, like an absolute prick like the other
Yeah.
guys that are just, I mean, there's one point where I guess like Bachelor number two is like, I want a girl with like at least, a C cup or
Hmm.
something ridiculous, like
I
only
think
wants
I
someone
think he
who's
says that
busty.
backstage, but yeah, like
Yeah. Oh, he
he's
does say it
super, yeah,
backstage.
he's super skeezy. The dude that's bachelor number one is just a moron. And
Yeah.
then you have this guy that is like smart and articulate, and
Right.
he's the one that happens to be the serial killer.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which
so
is
it's,
crazy.
yeah.
But how, I'm curious of your reaction to the the girl who's like the runaway. Did you think that she was gonna die? And because they showed him take advantage of two other women who he ends up killing, but they don't really show the younger girl, her character's name is Amy, until the very end. Like you see him take her
Hmm.
to the car and then he knocks her out. And then it's almost like she like plays with him to the
Hmm.
part where she's like, don't tell anyone about this." Like as if she didn't understand that he just raped her and
I,
tried to kill her.
I think it's the opposite though, because that whole bit was true. So that whole thing that happened there was true, and she knew that she had the opportunity, because the way the scene plays out now, I don't know if the crying bit is real, but he had finished doing,
What he
her
did.
horrible things to her, hadn't killed her yet. She was out cold. She kind of woke up from being knocked out.
Right.
And she sees him crying. And I think she sees a moment because she was a bit of a street urchin herself, right? So she's got street smarts. She's had to survive things that other people haven't had to survive. And she knows that, like, if she plays him right, maybe she can get away. And
Right.
so she basically, I forget exactly what she says, but she says something along the lines of, you know, would you please not tell anybody this happened, making it sound like
Correct. As if
playing to
she's
his
taking
like
the
psychology.
blame. Right.
Exactly.
As if
Exactly.
like
Like it's all
she's
her
telling him
fault.
her fault, which
Yeah.
is like, oh, she really thinks this, which maybe gives him some sort of like empathy for her, where he's like, I don't want to kill her now, or at least at this moment, let's give her a little bit more
Yeah. Like
time.
something psychological there just kept him from, I guess, blaming himself for it. And once he didn't have that self-loathing,
Yeah.
he at least at the moment didn't feel like he had to kill her. But the conversation that she had with him, at least from what I read, is very, very close to the conversation that the real girl had. This is the real girl that got him caught. So
Right.
it was a teenage girl that ultimately got him caught. It was not Anna Kendrick's character. She
Hmm.
just she was just in a position where she could have ended up
Dad.
going on this date with him and ended him dead. Now, there is, like, I saw a few posts and stuff online about how there's that 2 minutes with her in the parking lot with him, with Anna Kendrick in the parking lot with him, that is like ultra tense, and it really, really is because
Oh, totally.
they've had their moment. It's been a little awkward or whatever. Um, she kind of decides, yeah, I'm not going to do this.
She gives him a fake number.
Yeah, and he somewhere in there it clicks with him that she's not going to go on this date. So now, like, you can see, he becomes the predator. Like, he is now.
And he's paranoid
Mhm.
because like he picks up on this.
Yeah. And so there's a
Mm.
whole, like, it's literally about 2 minutes where they have their face off, and then she's walking to her car, and you can see him walking, I don't know, 50, 100 paces away, but following her towards her car. And you just know that, it's about to go bad. And
Hmm.
I was actually really like, I I didn't know much about it, and I didn't read the true story until after I watched it. So that was really cool to know that it was a true story, but not know the details because it didn't
Right.
really give anything away. Um,
Hmm.
but I thought she was really good. I thought Anna Kendrick was really good. I thought the
Hmm.
the dude was genuinely, um,
Creepy.
yeah, creepy and disturbing. Like, he did a really good job. Um, and I thought it deserved the reviews that it got. It was a good, it was a good movie.
Yeah. Despite everything we said about Netflix movies, this actually was pretty decent. I wonder if it's because it stays within like the murder mystery. I think they do that very well.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think too, this one's got a few names in it. This one's got more names than some of the other ones.
Hmm.
Anna Kendrick, you've got Tony Hale as the game show host. A very
Hmm.
different role for him too. He usually kind of plays the buffoon in a
Hmm.
lot of things. As a matter of fact, um, he is also on Veep, which we just talked about, and he was Julia Louis-Dreyfus's like right hand man, which
Hmm.
he is hilarious as. Um, but yeah, I mean, the guys that play the bachelors, they're perfect in the parts that they play. Like, the one guy is just so dumb and confused that it's hilarious. Like, he's
Hmm.
just confused by everything. The other guy is just slimy as hell. Um, but this was really, this is almost like something. Again, I don't know if this would have done well in the theater. It may have. It's definitely 91% from the critics, 69% from the
It
audience.
felt pretty low budget, though. I don't know if you got
Sure,
that
sure,
vibe.
for
It
sure.
felt very low budget
Yeah, I feel like this may have been Anna Kendrick getting her debut as a director.
and just getting her
Um,
feet wet.
exactly, and maybe being okay with taking the Netflix path because this
Hmm.
is that case where if you put it on Netflix and if they pump it as one of their promoted shows or movies or whatever for
Movies.
the week,
Yeah.
it's going to get eyeballs. And in this case, that may be better than it going to the theater and nobody really watching it. And
Right.
people are talking about it
Right. It's going to
because it's
make
on
more
Netflix.
revenue because it's going to stay on Netflix longer than it does in the theaters.
Yeah, and now she has created a movie again that she directed that got great
Hmm.
reviews from the critics, great reviews from the audience, and that opens the door for her to do more of these things. So I think that's great for her. So in this case, I think selling it to Netflix probably
Hmm.
was a benefit for her.
I will say though, Kevin, there is a bit of a disparity. 69%
Hmm.
popcorn meter from the audience, 91% from the critics. I liked it. I didn't love it. I
Hmm.
would probably give it like in the 70s, but yeah, the
Yeah.
critics gave it 90%. And I don't know if it's just how she covered these true events that really spoke to them. Because it's funny because I had heard about this before. Like I didn't know
Hmm.
his name was Rodney Alcala, but
Hmm.
I had heard like years ago, oh yeah, there was this serial killer who was put on a dating show.
Yeah.
So when I found out what this, well, I found out this film was coming out and what it entailed, I was like, I have heard of this like vaguely, but interesting how they're making this into a movie. And I think it was like the right length of time too. Like they
Hmm.
didn't go to all, and they said it like the end credits. They think he might have killed like close to 100 women, but there's only like maybe like 7 to 20 documented.
Yeah. 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 What was the final number? Like 130, they thought maybe?
They thought possibly, but like in
Yeah.
terms of just body count, I think like something like 7 to 20, something like
Yeah.
way
It was
lower,
a lot lower.
fraction.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's creepy, and the way he went about it by making these women feel beautiful. I'm a photographer. I'm
Hmm.
looking for a muse. You're my muse. Like it's just gross.
Well, and they
And he preyed
certainly.
on these like very lost women
Hmm.
that didn't have much, or even how about the woman that was moving in? And he just that was creepy too, because she wasn't even like it was sort of like not planned. That
Right
was
place, right time. Yeah.
gross.
Took care of it. It was another thing that was interesting too is you have the opening scene where he's just taking
Hmm.
pictures of this girl and he strangles her and she dies and he does CPR to bring her back to life because he hasn't done whatever it is he wants to do, right? That gives you a really quick look into just how crazy this guy is.
Sick people are, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't
Hmm.
know that there's necessarily any truth to that part of that story. But
We don't
he
know because she's gone.
Yeah. Now, another thing that was really interesting, and I think they cover it in the end credits or at the end of the thing, but in real life, like he was arrested for things and let go, and
Yep.
like bad things, and let go at the time. Like he was set up by the world to be as bad as he was because nobody held him accountable for the things that he did
Yep.
that were still bad.
Yeah. Just looked it up, Kevin. He died in 2021.
Yeah, yeah, he didn't get the death penalty, so he just recently died.
Yikes.
So yeah, it's an interesting story for sure. A fascinating one, more so
Mm-hmm.
because it's real. And
Oh
I mean,
God.
it's well told. Um, it's not the greatest story ever told, but it's really, really interesting.
But
So,
it's almost like a mockery as a like an FU being like, I'm killing people. I'm still gonna go on the show and I'm gonna still date
mhm.
women. It's just gross.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's basically, it's like I'm undetectable.
Yep. It's very much the Zodiac killer is the same thing. It's like you can't catch me even if I tell you what I'm doing, or I will be right in front of your face and you won't catch me or you
Right.
won't do anything about it. And I mean, it's the same thing. This guy was even worse. This guy actually got caught and let go more than once. Whereas at least the Zodiac killer, if it, assuming that the story is true and this is the guy,
Right.
like they stopped him. They saw that he was suspicious and were like, it can't possibly be you. Go ahead.
Hmm.
So it's scary, a scary time, in the world. Like I can't with the Zodiac killer, there's a whole thing like he threatened school buses and like cop cars followed school buses everywhere. Like it was a thing. There was a whole panic about it. So
Hmm.
um it was um it was crazy. It was wild. So
Hmm.
yeah, I police work must have been so much harder back then anyways. Like I said,
Hmm.
you didn't have databases, you didn't have um all of the information at your hand. You didn't have surveillance and
Forensics teams, yeah.
yeah, like it was just different, and that's hard. I mean, one of the people with the Zodiac killer that was working on trying to break the cipher code was the dude that did the comics for the newspaper. Like he was just a guy, like it totally bizarre. So
Very much so.
um yeah, definitely a different era for sure.
Hmm.
Um but this one I would at least recommend to people. I would say you can go watch it. Like you said, I'm with you. I'd probably give it a mid 70s.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good. It's not great. Didn't blow my mind. Nobody's going to win an award for it.
No.
Um, but it was good, and I would recommend it to anybody, especially
Hmm.
if you are at all fascinated by the true crime stuff because it's real. It really happened.
For sure.
So cool. All right. Well, that's all I've got. You have anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right, cool. Then I think Andrew was out this week. He will be out next week. Then he says he'll be back for a while, but he always says that and then finds some reason to go do things that are cooler. I don't know what that guy does. He's just really cool.
He's very
Uh,
cool.
I'll never be that cool. But there might be one week in December that I miss because my daughter's going to be in town and
Oh,
she's cooler than
nice.
me, so I got to hang out with her for sure.
Nice.
Um, and but otherwise, yeah, we'll keep on going. I've already got a list of things to watch for next week.
Yay.
There's a movie out called Caddo Lake on HBO that I think is a Shyamalan film, or
Ooh,
is Shyamalan adjacent. Maybe he just produced it, but I
okay.
know his name is attached to it somewhere.
Cool.
And stars Dylan, what's his name from the Maze Runner? Um,
O'Brien.
yeah, there you go. Oh, and from Teen Wolf.
Freaking love Teen Wolf. Yo, have you seen Teen Wolf?
No, no, I have
Ah,
too much
have
respect
it.
for myself as an adult. But my daughter loved it.
It's like my favorite series, one of my favorite series of all time. I watched it when it first came out, and I think in what was it, 2021, I rewatched it from beginning and then till I think there's like 5 or 6 seasons. I watched it from start to finish. It took me like I think 2 or 3 months, but it's so good. Ugh, I love that show. I love
See,
Dylan O'Brien. I love the whole story. I saw one of the characters one day when I was having dinner on the Upper West Side. Um, oh, so good. It's such a good show.
see, for
They
me,
did a
Teen Wolf will
movie.
always be Michael J. Fox.
Okay.
He was the
No,
original
this
Teen Wolf, and then Jason Bateman played him in Teen Wolf 2.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, I like saw brief. I mean, like this is something else. So this is like Andrew. I remember I told Andrew how good it was. He's like, "Oh, it's so YA, so YA," and I was like, "But it's so good. It's just it's there's love, there's drama, there's like different creatures that pop up. I'm fascinated. Oh my God, the main character who plays Scott Hale is it the same character, Scott Hale, or no in the movie or no?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Because it was very much an 80s movie, so it's been a long, or maybe
Uh, I mean,
maybe early
MTV
90s, but I think
produced
it was
it.
80s. Yeah.
Honestly, if this came out 10, 15 years later, yeah, let's say 10 plus years later on Netflix, this would blow up. Blow up. You know, it was on MTV. It was the wrong platform. Honestly, I think a lot of
Yeah.
people didn't know enough about it, but it was so good. Tyler Posey, Dylan O'Brien, um, those are like the main people in it I'm going through. Like no one else is like that much of a big name. But oh, they were so I think Dylan's probably the most successful person out
Mhm.
of that franchise. But I think had it not been, it's on Hulu now, but gosh, if this had launched originally on like a Netflix or Hulu years later, this like people would be really, really into it because it was written so well. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it definitely has the fan base. Like I said, my daughter loved it.
How old's your daughter?
Um, she is 27, almost
Okay,
28.
so okay, so a little bit younger than me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm 33. So, oh, I love that. This like came out when I was in college and I was following it. And I mean, they're the actors are all like around my age, but they're playing
Hmm.
high school students, and I was all about it. It was so good. And then they had it's so funny. I don't know if you know the comedian, but I had seen him at a comedy show, and he plays the lacrosse coach. What's his name? Is it Orny Adams? Is that his name? Lacrosse. Yeah, Orny Adams, who's like this like complete goofball, and he plays the lacrosse coach in like all the seasons. And then Paramount Plus released either last year or the year before, I think it was maybe 2022, a movie, and it was ridiculous. It was horrible, where they all come back, like 10 years later to their hometown because there is an atrocity that happens where all of these people are needed, and more of the characters get turned into werewolves, or they have different powers where they're different creatures. But overall, it's such a good series. It's awesome. I hope they put it on Netflix at some point. People will just realize how good of a show it was. I really, it's like where it's, I think, released. Like MTV is not like a place where you would put drama series. It's where you put reality
Yeah.
TV. I thought it was so inappropriate. Had it been like, I guess at the time on ABC or somewhere else, well, maybe not ABC for teens. Like, where do teens go for drama series? I don't know if there was a place.
Yeah, I don't know that there was either. CW would be the only place that I could think of.
Yes, yes, CW or ABC Family. I feel like because
Yep.
that's where like Pretty Little Liars was and
Hmm.
stuff. Like one of those, fine. But
And to be fair, I liked Pretty Little Liars. I did watch that and I did enjoy that one.
yeah,
It was an interesting mystery.
okay,
With
yeah,
Teen Wolf, it looks like
it's on
Tyler Hoechlin was in
MTV.
it for quite a bit too.
Freaking love him. He's so beautiful. Yes, he
Tyler
was good.
Hoechlin, he's
Whew,
Superman and
yes.
Superman and Lois.
Oh, okay. Well,
He is, in my opinion, the best Superman that we've ever had. Superman and
really.
Lois is a fantastic show.
Okay.
It's in its final season right now. It is one of the best tellings of Superman that there's been because he's an
Mm-hmm.
adult. It's about him and his kids and his wife post all the young Superman heroics, right? Like it's him kind of
Sure.
a little more small town life and him dealing with still, big threats and stuff, but it's a more mature Superman than you see anywhere else. And I think it really
Yeah.
is one of the best takes on Superman that I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, he plays Derek Hale on Teen Wolf. I'm sorry, Scott McCall is the main character who Tyler Posey plays, who gets turned like first episode because Derek Hale bites him.
Mm.
And Derek Hale is almost like his mentor on how to deal and learn how to utilize his werewolf capabilities, which is awesome. And he falls in love with this girl who's new to town, and her and her parents are, uh, they basically are come to town to kill werewolves, and like he doesn't understand that at first, and it's just, oh, it's so good. It's so good. Uh, maybe your daughter can come on one day and we can talk about Teen Wolf. It's so good.
Uh,
Such a good series, but it's actually like seriously like one of my. I'm not really into drama series like this, but or even really in the past, but this is something else. Like that's one like I had to watch all five, 6 seasons. I was that addicted to it. Others I give up on, but like something like this, I was invested in finishing it because it was so good.
well, and to be fair, like I can joke about it being YA and Andrew can joke about it being YA and all that.
Yeah,
Um, but
it's
it's a
so good.
7.7 on IMDb, which is pretty high. From Rotten Tomatoes, it's an 81 and an 85%. So,
It's
like,
consistent.
yeah, yeah,
85
like,
from the viewers, even 81. Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
yeah, I feel like it's not necessarily something that I would go out and watch, but at the same time, like it did really well. So,
It
um,
could have been better. It could have been better. I'm like so mad now that like not enough people know about it because I'll talk about it with people, and with the exception of like one of my college roommates, nobody's ever heard of it, or they're like, "Oh, is that the werewolf show?" Like they just think it's
Hmm.
something lame, and it's so not lame. There's a lot of character building, a lot of romance, and
Well, and to be
yeah,
fair,
oh,
like
it's
the
so
name
good.
doesn't do it any favors either.
No, not at
Like,
all. Teen Wolf, like what a shitty name. If someone's like, "Watch this show," it's called Teen Wolf. I'd be like, "No, thanks."
I just feel like if you watch the original movie with Michael J. Fox, he Teen Wolf is the perfect name for that. He's a teenager that becomes a werewolf, and he's like the high school basketball player. And
Right.
basically, in that movie, he outs himself to everybody as a werewolf. Like it's a comedy. Like it is 100% a comedy.
Right. This is
Um,
not a comedy. This is a
yeah,
drama series. And yeah, he's he's I think up until maybe like season 3 or season 4, his mo own mother doesn't know that he's a werewolf and that he was bitten and why he was bitten. And then it shows the origins of like all of these creatures. Like one of the girls who's in all the seasons, her name is Holland Roden is the actress. She plays my God, why am I blanking out? She's the redhead, but she plays a basically this high school like popular girl, and you find out in a few seasons through, she has these crazy capabilities to almost pick up on danger ahead of time. She's a banshee, which is super crazy because I'm like, I haven't heard about a banshee in years, right? Like it's something like you hear about maybe like when you're a child and learn about banshees. But yeah, Holland Roden. She plays. Oh, why am I blanking on her character? Lydia Martin. Yep, Lydia. So, and she's awesome. So good. They're all so good in it. Yeah, watch Teen Wolf. Teen Wolf. Forget everything else we talked about tonight. Watch Teen Wolf.
just do this thing.
Just watch Teen Wolf. Main message. No, no, we did cover some good stuff this evening, but also
Yeah,
Teen Wolf.
yeah. Well, I may. You know what? If I get to that point where I don't have anything to watch, which I'm not at right now, I've got too much stuff to watch. But
You can bond
there's.
with your daughter and be like, "Hey, we should
I
watch Teen Wolf."
I know she would flip.
I think even Andrew would like it. I know Andrew is like, no, it's YA. Andrew, it's good. It's so good.
I will almost bet money that he will probably never watch an episode.
Probably not. He's missing out. And
So
it's got sports in it. He hates sports. It's got lacrosse. I mean, like, it gets to the point where, like, almost like half the team is like converting into a werewolf.
yeah, yeah, it
So
was
funny.
basketball in the original.
Oh,
But
was it? That's
yeah,
funny. No,
yeah,
this is
he
like
was
a
basketball.
very lacrosse. It felt very early 2000s too.
Does it take place on the East Coast? It must
No,
if they're doing
I think it's
lacrosse.
really, I thought it was like California.
Usually, like these stories are like
Teen
Pacific
Wolf,
Northwest kind of things.
what town does it take place in? A lot of this is impromptu. Beacon Hill, California.
Is it really?
Student living the fictional California town of Beacon Hills. I knew it was California. It felt very California.
All
Beacon
right.
Hills, California is the setting for the TV series and movie Teen Wolf. Probably the movie that came out like a year or two ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. 2011 to 2017. Filming locations include Northridge, Los Angeles, and Pacific Palisades. I knew it.
That's funny.
But yeah, it was really funny. It's really good too.
All right. Cool. Well, then, if we've covered everything, including somehow Teen Wolf,
Yes.
then
Yeah.
I will say to everybody watching, thank you for watching or thank you for listening. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.